The UN Biodiversity Convention COP15 is being held in Montreal, Canada. Delegates are trying to draft a global agreement to slow the decline of Earth's biodiversity. It's being estimated that around 1 million animal and plant species could disappear within the coming decades. I'm very honored to be joined here by Egyptian Ambassador to China, Asim Hanafi, to talk about the convention. Egypt is one of the world's first countries to take an active interest in biodiversity conservation at the regional and international levels, and Egypt was the first Arab country to host the CBD-COP in 2018. What wisdom could Egypt share with us? Good afternoon, Mr. Ambassador, and thank you for talking to us on the Shared by Nature program. As you know, Egypt is one of the world's first countries to take an active interest in biodiversity conservation and was the first Arab country to host the CBD-COP. I've read a report by the Reuters that Egypt's corals appear to be adapting better than corals elsewhere, suffering less from bleaching. So on top of your achievements in this field already, how did hosting an international conference like this contribute to Egypt's efforts to protect biodiversity?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. As of course, as a host of the 14th meeting of the CBD COP, the government of Egypt took the advantage of the opportunity to launch an initiative to coherently address the three most serious global crises, namely biodiversity loss, climate change, and land and ecosystems degradation. The Egyptian initiative, named a coherent approach for addressing biodiversity loss, climate change, and land and ecosystem degradation, aimed to contribute to making the vision of the strategic plan for biodiversity a reality. So by 2050, biodiversity is valued, conserved, restored, and wisely used, maintaining ecosystem services, sustaining a healthy planet, and delivering benefits essential for all people. The initiative called for imminent mobilization at all levels to accelerate action for conservation, sustainable use, and halting deforestation and other forms of habitat loss and destruction, restoring and rehabilitating degraded ecosystems and croplands. Another thing is, of course, the hosting the COP14 was also a stepping stone for us to host the COP27 that recently convened in Sharm el-Sheikh, where Egypt incorporated the biodiversity issue into the agenda of the COP27, as you all know.
It's for the first time in the conference history that Egypt dedicated one day of the COP27 agenda to biodiversity. How do you think that contribute to the COP15?
Of course, the UN FCC and COP27, as you know, focused on addressing climate change, whereas the CBD and COP15 focused on promoting the conservation and sustainable use of biological biodiversity. But there are many connections and overlaps between two conventions. Both recognize the importance of biodiversity for addressing climate change and achieving sustainable development. Also, both conventions recognize the need for international cooperation and the sharing of knowledge and expertise and technology to address those challenges. Egypt realized those intersections, of course, and this is why it decided to bridge the gap between both conventions in COP27 and succeed in including, for the first time in COP27, final agreement on known as the Sharm el-Sheikh implementation plan that included for the first time actions dedicated to oceans, to forests, to agriculture. It shows that the recognition of the link or nexus between protecting nature and climate change.
To maintain biological diversity on this planet, all countries need to work together. It's like the climate change issue. But so far, there seems to be no major agreements reached in terms of halting the decline of biodiversity. I mean, in climate, there is the Paris Agreement. So why do you think it is so difficult to get a majority of countries on board?
Well, frankly, there are so many reasons why it can be difficult to get a majority of countries on agreement to halt the decline of biodiversity. One reason, in our opinion, is that the issue of biodiversity loss can be complex and can require significant changes to economic and political strategies. Additionally, different countries have different priorities and may not be willing to make the necessary changes or sacrifices to address the issue. Finally, the issue of biodiversity loss can be difficult to prioritize when compared to other urgent global challenges, such as climate change, economic instability, food insecurity, all that, especially when many developing countries need funding and support if they are to expand protected areas and grow their economies in a less destructive way. However, I remain hopeful that the world is now at a stage where everyone realizes the imminent dangers to our planet. An agreement can be reached in the near future. Yes.
Then are you optimistic that this two-week conference currently going on will result in major breakthroughs?
We have to admit that the COP15 ambitions are high.
Okay.
It aims to adopt a globally agreed framework called the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework for living in harmony with nature, with a vision that by 2050, biodiversity is valued, conserved, and restored. All this, of course, for a healthy planet. But it has many challenges. As the COP15, till now, the COP10 goals are not fully implemented. But I'm positive that in the end, as in COP27, in the end, the final agreement could be reached that could be both ambitious and realistic at the same time to halt the biodiversity loss.
How do you assess China's commitment to biological diversity protection currently?
China is a host to parts of 4 of the world's global biodiversity hotspots. And China has made commendable efforts in protecting its biological diversity. In 2018, for example, Chinese leaders coined the term ecological civilization. This signaled recognition that development should consider environmental impacts as well as economic goals. China also created protected areas covering nearly 15% of its total land area. We have noticed with admiration in 2021, President Xi Jinping announced that China is formally augmenting its protected area systems with a network of 5 national parks, which is among the largest such systems in the world. China also has the fastest expanding forest area in the world, whereas the forests are shrinking, the rainforests are shrinking elsewhere, but it is noticeable that here there is a fast reverse trend. From 2013 to 2017, China reforested almost 825 million acres of bare and cultivated lands. At least 10 of China's notable endangered species are on the path to recovery, including the giant panda. So all these achievements are naturally very commendable, and Egypt is looking forward to cooperation in the transfer of knowledge and technology in such areas. Yes.
China and Egypt have maintained cooperation in a variety of areas. And as you may know, recently the Chinese and Egyptian leaders have met in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Chinese President Xi Jinping said that China aims to strengthen communication and cooperation with Egypt in energy transition, in green economic sectors, and low carbon technologies. What do you think that China and Egypt could do more together on protecting the environment and, of course, on protecting wildlife?
It's a very good question. Of course, relations between both countries come a long way back. It's a historical relation relationship that evolved over the years since the 50s. We have a very, very impressive network of trade and cultural exchanges, dating since the Silk Road, probably the Silk Road in the early times. But so far, of course, climate change played also, and climate change talks played a very, very important role in our exchanges. We maintain a very solid dialogue with our Chinese friends on climate change, on climate action. And of course, as parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity, both countries have committed to working together and preserve the biodiversity. I mean, in 2014, for example, we launched together, Egypt and China and Sharm el-Sheikh, the Beijing Action Agenda for Nature and People, which aims to catalyze an array of actions from all sectors and stakeholders in support of biodiversity conservation. When it comes to wildlife conservation, China is a key part and key partner in Africa. And we have to address the various gaps here and there. But of course, Chinese government and Chinese companies have provided funds and equipment and manpower, technology to support African countries, not only in the development strategy, but also in sustainable development strategies and the conservation of endangered species. As the world continues to face threats to its wildlife and habitats, Egypt is looking forward to enhance relations with China, particularly in sharing the expertise, in the knowledge, in technology, of course, in the localization of technology in Egypt. And we have a very promising agenda to address in that regard.